What's up, guys? It's MB Boxing, and today I'm going to be predicting the outcome of Andy Ruiz versus Luis Ortiz. And this is going to be a 12-rounder in the heavyweight division. And this fight is going to be Sunday, September 4th, from the Crypto.com Arena in Los Angeles, California. And this fight is going to be broadcasted on Fox pay-per-view. And to get both fighters' resumes, Andy Ruiz, fighting out of the United States of Mexican heritage, holds a record of 34 wins with 2 defeats and 22 wins coming by way of knockout. He is currently not ranked by BoxRec in the heavyweight division due to inactivity. However, he is the former unified WBO, WBA, and IBF heavyweight world champion, and he was the first ever recognized Mexican heavyweight world champion. He's also a former WBO heavyweight world title challenger as well. But to list both of his defeats and some of his best wins, he has a majority decision loss to Joseph Parker, and many people thought he won that fight, but it did take place in Parker's home country, so obviously the judges were a bit swayed, but it was still a very competitive fight. I thought Ruiz won, but they edged it to Parker, and in that very moment when Ruiz and Parker fought, it was two men fighting to become the first ever man from their country to be a heavyweight champion. Ruiz would have been from Mexico at the time, obviously, and Parker became the first ever heavyweight world champion from New Zealand. So it was a very competitive fight, but I thought Ruiz won. The judges edged it by majority decision to Parker. But then in his second ever loss, it came by wide unanimous decision to Anthony Joshua, and it was in their second fight. Ruiz came in much heavier. It didn't look like he was as focused as the first fight. Because this fight he was obviously going in as the champion, with a lot of money behind him from the first fight and now from this fight too. And in that second fight, Joshua just boxed him from the outside, but just landing big jabs, big right hands, and just dictating the pace of the fight. Ruiz didn't really do much, and Joshua got a wide unanimous decision over Ruiz. But when it comes to some of his best wins, in his last fight, he got a unanimous decision win over Chris Arreola. That's probably his second best win of his career. He actually got dropped in that fight, and that was pretty surprising. And he didn't really fight too well, if I'm going to be 100% honest. But he still got the job done. Another one of his best wins was obviously that knockout win over Anthony Joshua, where it was one of the biggest upsets of all time, where he came in as I believe maybe it was more than a 10-1 underdog in that fight. He dropped Joshua 4 times and got the win, 4 times, till it was waved off. And like I said, that was one of the biggest upsets, and it was definitely the biggest upset of 2019 as well. Another one of his solid wins would probably be his knockout win that came just before the Joshua fight, and that was a knockout win over Alexander Dimitrenko. But to get his opponent's resume, Luis Ortiz, fighting out of Cuba, now based out of Miami, Florida, holds a record of 33 wins with 2 defeats and 28 wins coming by way of knockout. He's currently ranked number 10 by BoxRec in the heavyweight division. He's also the former interim WBA heavyweight world title holder, and he's also a former 2-time WBC heavyweight world title challenger. But to list both of his defeats and then some of his best wins, he has 2 knockout losses, both coming to Deontay Wilder. In the first fight, it was a very close and competitive fight. The scores were really close, more in favor of Ortiz, by 1 point or by 2 points, or maybe even having Wilder ahead by 1 point. It was that type of fight. It was really, really close. But then the second fight, the first fight obviously was close. Then Wilder knocked out Ortiz. But then the second fight, Wilder was down 6-0 or 5-0 or 5-1. Wilder was down big and Ortiz was up big, and then Wilder landed one big right hand to the top of the head of Ortiz, or the forehead of Ortiz, and Ortiz went crashing down. He was stiff on the canvas and didn't get up for the 10 count, and that was a brutal knockout loss for Luis Ortiz because he was up so widely on the scorecards. But to list some of his best victories, he has a knockout win over Brian Jennings. He has a knockout win over Tony Thompson, a wide unanimous decision victory over Malik Scott. He has a knockout win over David Allen. He also has a knockout win over Travis Kaufman. He has a unanimous decision victory over Christian Hammer. And he's coming off, which is probably his best win to date, which is a stoppage win over Charles Martin coming in January of this year. So in my opinion, this fight is actually a very, very hard fight to predict. I think it is a 50-50 fight. I could definitely see either man winning this fight, and I actually had a very, very tough time predicting this fight, if I'm going to be 100% honest. So the thing is, I don't really think that there's going to be a knockout in this fight, if I'm going to be 100% honest. I know a lot of people are predicting stoppage. I could definitely see it, but I'm edging that if either man's going to win, it's going to be on points, and it's going to be pretty close. So the thing is, both of these men in their last fight, I guess you could say, didn't really perform to the caliber that they thought that the fans thought they should have, because Ruiz, he was expected to dominate Chris Arreola, but what ended up happening was that he was dropped in the I think it was the second, and then he was hurt in the third, like wobbled, unless it was just switched around like the third and the fourth. But he was dropped early, then stunned with another big hook from Arreola, and then I actually thought that fight was pretty close. I think I had it like a 2-point fight, or I think I had it a few points for Ruiz. I thought that Arreola was still hanging in there, but I mean, it seems like the average scorecard for that fight was like 116, 111 for Ruiz, but still, I mean, facing an old guy like Arreola, who was never really like a clear-cut top 10 guy throughout his entire career, I mean, it was still Ruiz didn't really fight as good as people were thinking he would. But yeah. But as for Luis Ortiz, in his last fight, he was expected. A lot of people really were discrediting his opponent in Charles Martin. A lot of people were expecting him to destroy Martin without any trouble. But Martin was actually beating Ortiz like 4 rounds to 1, 3 rounds to 2. But you got to remember, Charles Martin dropped Luis Ortiz twice in that fight. In the first round, Luis Ortiz got caught with a big temple shot. And this was actually a very similar knockdown to when Ruiz got dropped by Arreola. It was a big straight to like the side of the head, and then Ruiz took a knee when he got hit by Arreola, and then Ortiz took a knee when he got hit in the side of the head with that straight from Charles Martin. Both of them got dropped in their fights basically by the same way. But then the second knockdown with Luis Ortiz, I mean, this knockdown kind of shows that Luis Ortiz's legs aren't that great, and his balance isn't as great as when he was younger, because he got dropped with a very stiff jab from Charles Martin. It was like a stiff jab to the jaw, and Ortiz got sent crashing down to the canvas towards the end of the 4th round. But then, I mean, the thing is, this is why his performance was better than Ruiz's, because he fought a tougher opponent in Martin, and he was able to get Martin out of there when he was down big. Like, I believe the fan scorecards on BoxRec say they had Martin up 49-45. I had to fight 48-46 for Martin. Like, Martin was up pretty comfortably in this fight, but then Ortiz landed a big left hand out of nowhere. Charles Martin was sent. He was out of it. I mean, that big left hand sent Charles Martin outstanding. And when I say outstanding, he was knocked out while he was standing. And then Luis Ortiz went in for the kill, dropped Martin. Then Martin got back up, and then he started hitting him again, dropped him, and the referee waved it off. So yeah, that's a very solid win for Luis Ortiz. Although both of them, like I said before, were expected to win easily. But they had to go through some adversity. But I would say Luis Ortiz is coming off a much better victory than Ruiz's, in much better fashion as well, even though he got dropped once more than Ruiz. But how I see this fight going down round by round, I think it's a very, very good fight between two top 10 heavyweights. Luis Ortiz, although he is like in his 40s, I just think that he's still a very solid, capable fighter. Although his balance might not be there and his footwork might not be there, I still think that he has a very good chance of beating Andy Ruiz. And at first I was thinking that Luis Ortiz would win this fight, but now I'm edging it towards Andy Ruiz very, very closely. I mean, the thing is, I'm just thinking that Luis Ortiz could just box easily on the outside, jabbing Ruiz, because I don't think that Ortiz, when he fought Martin, where Martin was the one or when Martin was the one on the outside landing big left hands, trying to keep Ortiz at bay, especially with the jab too. I mean, Ortiz is going to be like Martin in this fight. He's going to be the one on the outside. He's going to be the one throwing punches, trying to offset his opponent. But Ruiz is the come forward fighter. That's what we're going to see in this fight. And being that Ortiz's legs aren't as good as they were before, I just think that Ruiz will have a much easier time trying to track down Ortiz in the ring in this fight, and he'll be able to land some nice body shots, some solid hooks to the head. And the thing is, Ruiz's work is going to be coming forward and on the inside primarily. However, Ortiz's work, he's going to land some nice big left hands to the body and to the head of Ruiz while he's on the outside, and that's why I think this fight could be so close. And even though these are two pretty good punching heavyweights who have been dropped actually in their last fight, I feel like this fight will go the distance. But I do think that both these men could go down in this fight, but I think it's more likely for Ruiz to go down because it could be very similar to when Ruiz got dropped by Areola, where he was coming forward, got chopped with a straight, then sent down to the canvas, and that could definitely happen in this fight. I would not count that out. That could definitely happen earlier on in this fight in the first 3 rounds. But just to break this fight down round by round, this is a real tough fight to break down in my opinion. I just think that earlier on, I think Luis Ortiz probably will have his most success in this fight, if I'm going to say. He'll probably start jabbing very nicely on the outside, trying to keep Andy Ruiz at bay with the jab, with the straight left, and I think he'll just be landing the better shots than Ruiz in the first 3 rounds. But I could definitely see Ruiz edging a close round in there with some work to the body, some nice shots to the head coming forward. He might edge the first round, Ruiz, but rounds 2 and 3, I think Ortiz will adapt a bit and land some nice shots on the outside, and it could be 29-28 in favor of Luis Ortiz after 3 rounds. But then I think in rounds 4, 5, and 6, we could see Ruiz sort of have a resurgence and start to come forward a bit more, start to work Ortiz against the ropes, being that his legs aren't as great, and really just start to walk down Ortiz and land the better shots and win those rounds with, they'll be competitive, but I think he'll win them clearly, rounds 4, 5, and 6. So after 6 rounds, it could be 58-56 for Andy Ruiz. But then as the fight goes on, like maybe in round 7, here and there, like there's some rounds here and there I think that Luis Ortiz could edge, like maybe round 7, round 8, maybe round 9, any of those rounds I could see Luis Ortiz snagging with some nice shots on the outside. But, the thing is, like, once the second half of the fight starts, I think that both these men will start to slow down, but being that Ortiz is older and his legs are a bit gone, I think that Ruiz will have a bit more success, and I think he'll edge the fight with those later rounds. So I think that at the start of the second half, like I said, in round number 7, we could see Luis Ortiz edge it, because, even against Charles Martin, he wasn't tired, he stayed composed in that 6th round, so I think he'll be pretty much fine in the 7th, and he could edge that round with some nice pop shots on the outside and some big left hands. But then I think in round 8 and 9, Luis Ortiz will lose those rounds. I think that Andy Ruiz will once again just start coming forward and just putting on the pressure on Ortiz, and will land some of the better shots. And then maybe Luis Ortiz might edge like round 10. He might edge 1 more round, 2 more rounds maybe. Like he might even get close or even win like round number 9, round number 8, like around there. Like I said, Luis Ortiz will probably win the 7th. The 8th and 9th, probably the 8th will probably be a closer round that could go either way, because Luis Ortiz just came off of having momentum, which I think will happen in that 7th round. And I think that the 8th round could be close, could go either way. That's why I think there could be varying scorecards in this fight, and I think, yes, this fight will go the distance probably. But round 9, I think Ruiz will start back up with his offense much better. He'll win the round pretty clearly. In the 10th round, it definitely could go in favor of Ruiz, or maybe Ortiz. I think it could be pretty much competitive, but it could go in favor of Andy Ruiz, in my opinion. So I think after 10 rounds, the scorecards could read like 96-94 for Andy Ruiz, maybe 95-95, depending on some of the competitive rounds. But yeah, I think this fight will be pretty close after 10 rounds. But then I think in rounds 11 and 12, I think Andy Ruiz will take those rounds because they're later on in the fight, and I think he'll be stronger and a bit more and just be better conditioned than Ortiz, who's the much older man, who's, like I said in this video many times, that his legs are not as good as they were years ago. So I could definitely see Andy Ruiz edging the 11th and 12th round to win this fight on points. Yes, I think this fight will go the distance. I've seen a lot of people not picking this fight to go the distance, but I think it will. And I think Andy Ruiz will get the nod on the judges' scorecards and win this fight by a close, unanimous decision. I think that the judges will score this bout 116, 112, twice in favor of Andy Ruiz, and one judge will have this bout 115, 113 for Ruiz. It could be swapped. It could be like two judges have it 115, 113 Ruiz, one judge has it 116, 112. I just think it's going to be anywhere from 8 rounds to 4 or 7 rounds to 5 in favor of Andy Ruiz. So comment down below who you think is going to win this fight and what could be next for either fighter, depending on who you think is going to win. So overall, I believe that Andy Ruiz will defeat Luis Ortiz by a close unanimous decision to get probably the best victory of his career thus far, aside from that knockout win over Anthony Joshua. And I think that the judges will score this bout 116 to 112 or 115 to 113 in favor of Andy Ruiz. And yeah, that's really it. I'm MB Boxing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.